Hey guys, this one is a new video format and this is for the critique slash commission tier, which is available on the Patreon now. So this is a critique. Okay, so here's the art, and then I also have a version with the perspective lines on that you might be able to see there in the red and blue with the grid covering it. So what I did looking at this was to, if I reduce it so we can see, I went in and blocked out the perspectives. So I'm trying to line it up with the lines that you've already got in there to check if it's consistent. So when I lined it up with a ruler for this vanishing point and also this vanishing point that is way over here, those do line up with the grid that you're using there. So you do have something consistent that you can use to put your perspective in. So you can see if I go over this, my lines are going to snap to that ruler that I have, and you can see where everything lines up and we get the nice intersections of that. So you can see what it is that I'm going to be using going forward and referencing and where I'm getting those straight lines from as I go over some of this. Now I'll clear those out, and the first thing I wanted to look at was just putting some of those lines in. So everything is pretty much snapped to this angle. That is clearly the perspective that you're trying to fit the train into. So I'm going to stick to that. So I'll block the track in like this, and I'm not sure if you were trying to get this so it's a little bit curvy or if you were trying to kind of curve the perspective. I know you've got it moving around a bit more in the back, or if you don't want it to be more definitely kind of attached to the track and completely clipped onto it. But with the way the perspective is set up with very straight lines, I'm going to keep it to that with the way that I'm going to go forward with this. So let's keep that flat. I can kind of see where you're keeping to this here. There's a little bit of inconsistencies going on with the perspective. There's some things that are slightly off as I try and line them up. So let's have a look at, I think, this barrel piece at the front, and also the rest of the carriage here. So we're in 2-point perspective, so we've got the one vanishing point over that way that we looked at, and then we've got the other one that goes back this way. So we're trying to snap these shapes to that. Now on this front piece, if I draw a line in here, you can see that you have some volume coming out here on this piece. That is maybe a little balcony, I would say, like this piece that comes out here. You can see that where we have this front piece, the back front piece is more upways. So this doesn't quite snap to that perspective that you've got. So I'm going to give you a quick way to cheese this. So if we go in and block out, I can see this vertical line here and this vertical line here, and all the verticals seem to just be straight on this. We don't have any more vanishing points going on, so we don't have 3-point perspective. And then we have these angles going back to that vanishing point. So the side of this carriage is essentially in this space. Now you can do this with just drawing the one side and copy pasting it if you want something perfectly symmetrical. I'm going to do it with the symmetrical ruler just to make this a bit faster. So what we can do to get something like this is to draw out what you want on this plane, like so. So we have this box I'm going to express as something flat, and then I'll go in and draw where this window wants to be. We've got, I'll put the curtains in at the side as well, just to give us an idea of what kind of fullness they would have, like this. And I'm going to block in the balcony and the wheels. So I'll fill this space in with the curve around like this. And it pulls up slightly in the middle. And then we have these pieces like so, and the curtain. Let's draw that a little bit better. We'll have a curtain at the top like this. We have these shapes by the wheels, which are also going to pop out, and the wheels themselves like so. Let's plunk those there. Okay, so we've got something that is a flat expression of this. So if you're looking at it dead on, or if it was flat on a piece of paper, it would look like this. And I'm gonna get rid of that ruler. And a really, really easy way to cheese this is to get the free transform. And then all I'm gonna do, because we have a rectangle shape, is to go and line these corners up. With the perspective that I have, I'm going to pull this a little bit more squishy like this too, so that it lines up closer to what you have here. So then I have a kind of clearer placement for where all of that is. So the things that have more of that 3D depth that go back into the other vanishing point is this piece and this piece actually here. So now that I have it on that flat plane, I can reduce it. And then when I'm pulling that volume out, what I want to do is just draw it in black so it's a little bit easier to see. I basically have the same kind of box that I can start to fill in. So I will start pulling this outwards like this. And that's gonna very quickly give me angles for where these pieces are going to have that extra depth. I could probably do it with the wheels as well and give them a little bit of weight, but they might get covered up by there. So I can also go back to the other one and we can line those up, and that's going to give us some more boxes fairly easily. And I missed keeping this asset flat and copying it, but it is good to copy these so that you have duplicates if you need to come back to them. But what I can also do is keep that, and then I have another box to warp that into, and that will give me that front plane. And then all I have to do is kind of line those up using those lines that I have put in. I'll just sketch over this roughly as well. So we have this here, and then we have that angle of it coming forward, and it's going to roll around down this way. And then we have something that is a bit tidier immediately, and you can see the angles where everything comes out like this. We can kind of mirror what we already have. So that shape now sits a lot more cleanly into the perspective that you have built, just by essentially blocking out shapes in clean square angles, squares and rectangles, and then we can go and fill those in very easily, and it will give us something clean. And that is a very easy way to cheese things when you're doing digital art, because of how you can warp things around. Oh, and these pieces above the wheel too, we can start going and pulling those up as well. So we have the same volume going on there as well, like so. And then we have those lines going back to that other vanishing point, as I mentioned. We can pull these wheels out as well if we want to. I could do the same thing with going and bringing the box forward again if I wanted to as well, and we can just give those more volume and making sure that we keep to that perspective, pulling that way like so. And they're a little bit closer, and I didn't want to pull those out too far. We'll keep them more receded into there. So you can see already how that's given it a bit more solid structure. I know it's difficult with these kind of rounder shapes, but just remember that where you have these vanishing points and perspective lines set up, you want to be following them, and ideally if you've got a ruler that it can snap to. But like I say, the grid that you have set up seems to be pretty consistent with the lines that I've set up with the perspective rulers. So if you just follow those whenever you're trying to do something that fits into those lines, that will help a lot. So the next thing I want to look at is this front plane. So if I go back to this one, let's block in this front piece here. And what I want to do is find out where we want this circle to live. So I've got this front piece blocked in. I'm going to try and find where the center is. So if I want the center, then I just need to line up the corners like this. So that is going to be our center line down here. If we line up straight through the center of that cross that we've found in there. And we have a decent amount of space between the barrel there and the side of this box shape. So let's go and split these halves again. So we'll get this in quarters, and then I think that will be where I'm going to fit this shape into. So we'll do that again. And then we have these two lines. Let's put those in pink so that you can see them a bit easier actually. We have this line and this line. So what I want to do is fit that circle into this centerpiece now that I've figured out those proportions on that plane. And as I say, don't forget to use those rulers when you have them. So I want the ones that are radiating out this way. So you have the top of this shape around here, and we have the bottom of it around here. So now I have a shape there that is going to be where I want to put that circle in. So I will add a cross in there again, and then that's going to give me where I want to put that in and draw the circle on the top. Now you can do the same thing and draw a circle flat and then warp it into this shape that we have blocked out. I'm going to draw it in, so we want to hit the top there, and then we want to hit the side over here. And down that side as well, and to the bottom. If I go back to where I have this ruler coming this way, I can pull out from the top here, and I can pull out from the bottom there. And let's have the center line there. We can also just pull it out from the edge of this square as well and bring that outwards here, so that we would have the front plane. And again, we can do the same thing as I showed you at the side. I'm going to block this shape in here. We'll line those up, and then I'm going to draw it in freehand just so that it goes a bit faster and we can get that front piece in there. We already have where that exact center is here, so I can pull that out from where we have the ruler going in this direction. I can pull that out there and get the center for that piece, and then I can have that be the center of the dome that is sticking out here. So see a little bit more around that, and I'll fill that in. But you can see how this circle that is more forward is a little bit more compressed and warped compared to the other ones. So I'll draw in the dome like this, so we'll have the center hitting around there, and then that would give you more context for where this design would go. So you can see underneath there's like this cross in the design, so you would have that there, I guess, in the center, or you'd maybe have to pull it down a little bit, but that would give you context for that, and then I would be able to wrap that around the shape that I have blocked in here like that. Okay, I'm not going to spend too much more time on that, but you can see if I pull these back, then I have that barrel shape now. I'll draw some more of this in just to fill it out so you can see what my example looks like a little bit more as a whole piece. Again, I can sort of figure out from these lines that I've put in where a lot of the rest of this is going to sit like that, so I can kind of follow on with my sketching from that. Even if it's not, you know, perfectly calculated, I can go and sketch things in so you can get more of an idea of what's going on, like so. Pull that up a bit higher maybe so there's more room under the wheels, like this, and the track along here like that. I also like that you're doing this twist on the track, by the way. I like that you seem to get where you need those to join, and it sort of moves around like a ribbon. That's how I tend to think of a lot of things. I would be careful with the way that the boards are joining up though. Also using this center line that I calculated down here for the front of that box, we can pull that forward from the underneath and have that pull out along this line here, and that will give us the peak of the curve for the snow clearer, I think, on the front of the train. I'm sorry, I can't remember the name for those right now, but that would pull around like that. We'd have the peak there, and that would pull forward like so. So you can see I'm calculating just a few different little pieces, but that's giving me more context for what's going on. I'm keeping to those 2 lines of the perspective that I have set up as well, so you can see a bit more of my calculation on that. I think it would be interesting also if you were to carry on with drawing these circles and figure out how to do that for this top piece here, so that that had a more accurate circle for the funnel at the top. One more thing about the sizing and perspective also, I'm not sure if you wanted it to be like larger characters on kind of a smaller cartoony toy train. That's the kind of vibe I'm getting because of the sizing of them. So in a similar way to how I've been calculating some of this, what you could do is get this angle with the perspective going backwards on this ruler, and if I line it up with this character's head and we do the top and the bottom and pull it back, you can see how you're kind of going a bit smaller than that with these other characters that are further back, and it looks a little bit out of place, or like the carriage is bigger than it actually is. So I would pay attention to that, and if you did want them to be more realistic in terms of how they fit into the train rather than being large, like they're sitting in a little toy train. So if this was a balcony they were stood on, then you would maybe have this kind of height, so you would have the feet here and the head here, and it wouldn't be quite so tall, because right now you have a character who I guess half of the body would be like here to here. So if she stood up, she would be twice that. So I guess kind of up here. So overall, this character would maybe be that tall if she stood up. And like I say, I think that's fine if you want to go with that kind of proportion and that's what you're trying to do. But I think the difference would be more extreme if you wanted that more realistic in terms of how they sit in the train. Okay, I will take my workings off underneath. There's a little bit of them left, but you can see mine compared to yours. And I think you might have been trying to go for like more of a front facing angle so you can see more of the front of the train. And I think that's something you could change with the way that you have the perspective lined up. And I think that's something you've just got to mess with and kind of figure out. It is a bit of a pain to get used to. Overall, with the rest of it, let's have a look at everything else. With the colors, I would say I noticed that you're doing the thing where, if I bring the color wheel out, with the red, you have, this is the base, and then as we go further down across them, if you watch the color wheel, you can see that it's essentially the same color and it just moves closer to being black as it goes into the shading. And also, I think with the whites, as it gets lighter, you tend into the shading with white and having like a little bit of a tint of that orange in. Now that's better that it's tinting towards that orange where you have this light source in the back, which I actually think is really nice, by the way, because you have this big block of lighter color and then it's almost like the rest of this is kind of silhouetted in, so that you have like a really nice silhouette of this guy here and his little body by there. It's like this is a nice silhouette against that. It's a really nice big block of value that you have to separate those out. But I would say 10 things like over here, these lighter colors here aren't leaning into the yellow very much, so I'd maybe swing those into kind of the warmer colors so that we start swinging up towards the yellows so that everything is more consistent. And I know that you've got the kind of reflection down the bottom here, but I still think you could push that a bit more into the yellow. And since you've got this dark blue with the sky, I think that you could start to lean, especially these darker reds, you could start to lean those in towards the blue down this way. And it would probably end up with something a bit more kind of purpley so that it starts to reflect that color a bit more. So I'll even try it by slapping some over the top like this with a color layer to lean the shadows that way. I'd maybe lean it a bit more like this. Where you have the shadows, and more into the orange where those highlights are, so that you are leaning into the colors that are there. I really like this little window, sort of incorporating that light in as well over there. So I would say the next best things for you to focus on are going for those things with the perspective. Keep into those perspective lines that you're using so that the lines all line up with it and snap to it. Use rulers like that if you can. If not, you can set up your own vanishing points and draw from them to get those lines. Usually I'll stick to using the rulers and use them for each different vanishing point, and then go and erase any extra bits that look messy in between them, and also to start leaning into the color difference like that. And it's really easy to get it to look nice. I think you've got the makings of it here where you've got a cool shadow and warm highlight, but you can switch that and do warm shadows and cool highlights. So I would test out doing something like that just to get more range within the colors and not lean too much into just keeping the same color but tending it towards black, and then the same color and tending it towards white for the highlights. Yeah, thanks for watching. I hope this helped. This was for one of my Patreon subscribers to the commission/critique tier, where you get to choose one of those each month. I may open these as a regular commission option as well if people are interested. Yeah, thanks for watching. Links in the description. Goodbye!